We can speak now to Clare Moseley of Care for Calais. Ms Moseley, thanks for your time. Firstly, can you tell us the latest you're hearing on the conditions for migrants in Calais today?
Hi, thank you. Unfortunately, this weekend has been really unpleasant. We've seen the biggest amount of police action probably since the jungle was destroyed in 2016. There was massive evictions, there was violent tactics like tear gas and tents being set on fire. Hundreds of people were bussed out all over France. Possessions were destroyed. People walked for hours and hours to come back to the camp because they do always return. People were exhausted and they had no food, they had no sleep. It was incredibly difficult weekend, and conditions right now are dire because everywhere has been bulldozed, fenced off. People have nowhere to sleep. They're sleeping on the tarmac. It was wet the other night. Everything got soaked. It's horrible. It's horrible. And I don't see a solution coming from the government at the moment.
Unsurprisingly, when you hear the dire conditions, that naturally enough people are trying to leave and move somewhere else. We are getting reports that their numbers trying to cross over the channel to the United Kingdom has gone up quite dramatically in recent weeks. What are you seeing and hearing?
Yes, that's exactly what we're seeing. Probably partly due to the weather. Of course, in better weather, you are going to get more channel crossings. But yes, there's been a lot of people crossing over by boat. And we've seen absolute desperation. I mean, I know personally 4 men who crossed a week ago in a wooden dinghy with paddles. It had no engine. It was just big enough to fit 4 people in. And how they made it across. But, think about the size of the waves, the massive boats that come along. They crossed the channel in a paddle boat. But when I heard about it, I was so shocked. I was terrified. I'm so glad I didn't know the night they were doing it. But to see people driven to that level of desperation, people that taking those kind of risks, it's horrible. It's just horrible to see and to know about. I felt sick when I heard about it.
Now, Ms Moseley, you said you haven't seen any solutions coming forward from either the British or the French governments as things stand. They have been meeting this weekend, though, looking, they say, at cracking down on one part of the problem there. It's the people smuggling. What do you make over their reactions and their focus to date?
Well, this is nothing that we haven't heard before. The focus is always on security and deterrence. And when they blame the people smugglers a lot for this. But to us, the people smugglers are not the cause. The people smugglers are the symptom of the broader problem. And the broader problem is that these are people who want to claim asylum in the UK. But in order to claim their legal right of asylum, they have to physically be in the UK. And there's no safe and legal way for them to get there. So it's an underlying condition that the people smugglers are just a symptom of. If we could remove that problem, if there was a legal way for them to get to the UK, then the people smugglers would simply go away. So that is what we see as a solution, not just blaming the people smugglers, that they're a symptom, not a cause.
Indeed, and of course we're just a few months away from the Brexit, the end of the transition period with the UK's breakaway from the EU. But also, Ms Moseley, before I let you go, I'm wondering what the impact of Covid-19 has been among this population.
The impact is not so much what you would have expected. We haven't seen a massive impact of the disease itself, thankfully, so far. The impact was more what it had on the NGOs, because, of course, in Calais, it's mostly small organisations. We don't have anything like the Red Cross or massive charities there. We have small organisations, and they weren't set up to deal with this. A lot of the NGOs had to pull out or pull back, and the services disappeared. For 6 weeks, we were pretty much the only NGO on the ground. We were providing all the food at both locations. We were down to 9 volunteers at one point because people didn't have the resources to cope with this, and everything pulled back. Even the French government pulled back its food supply. People didn't have phone charging, they didn't have the clothes distributions. They're dependent on the small charities to survive, and the small charities aren't set up to deal with a global pandemic. So the biggest impact has been losing all the services that they depend on for their daily lives, and that has been horrific. We've seen people in rags, we've seen people with food and water shortages. The impact of losing all those services has been ridiculously hard for them, and ridiculously hard for us as well.
Indeed, it sounds like an absolutely awful situation, an impossible one. Ms Moseley, we'll have to leave it there, but thanks so much for giving us a picture of the dire conditions there for many people in the north of France.